person and to see the folks who are attending online. I'm going to talk a little bit about the number of communication pathways during drug development with FDA. All right. Before we start on that, I wanted to give a little bit of framework about what is FDA's communication philosophy, because that helps understand why we have the different pathways that we have. So first of all, our philosophy is that we have a shared goal of early availability of safe, effective, and high-quality drugs. However, we have different responsibilities within that goal. So I'm going to go over those. So sponsors' primary responsibilities are managing the drug development portion, soliciting feedback from the FDA, determining the nature and timing of submissions, and providing well-organized submissions for review. FDA's primary responsibilities are to ensure the safety and rights of subjects, the quality of scientific evaluation of drugs, enforcing good clinical practice, and human subject protection requirements. We also are responsible for reviewing the submissions, providing feedbacks on trial and development programs, and taking regulatory actions. And our third set of responsibilities are something that perhaps a lot of people are not fully aware of, but we have responsibility to promote the advancement of regulatory science. And we do that in a number of ways. We author guidances, we conduct and attend workshops, we collaborate with academia, we publish, and we present at professional conferences. So now that we have that framework, we're going to go and look at the number of communication pathways. And this is not, there's not going to be a quiz afterwards. This is just an overview to make you familiar with what your options are, and actually where you can go if you're not sure where to go as well. So for those of you who live in the area or have the opportunity to spend a little bit of time on Interstate 95, think of these pathways like the interstate system. So the odd ones run north and south, and the even ones run east and west. So you can spend all your days going up and down 95, and you'll never make it to California. If your destination is California, it's good to choose the best path possible before you start. And so hopefully that's what this will help you do. So we're going to start with the ones that are available 24/7. We have people from different time zones. We have people with different internal clocks. There are early birds, there are night owls, and the beauty of the internet is it's available to you, minus a few little maintenance down hours, but it's readily available mostly 24/7. So the first section we're going to start with are resources for sponsors. And the reason the FDA develops and maintains these web pages and web resources is a means of providing self-service tools. They're available to you when you want to know, not necessarily during our core hours, not the limited window of when somebody's available to answer the phone, but whenever you need to know the answer, it's available. Use of these tools allows more effective use of our resources in providing more complex and technical advice. So a simplified example is, I think somebody asked about the address earlier, and that was actually my simplified example. So let's say there's 100 people in the room, and 90 of you want to know the address of where to send your submission. If all 90 of you call and ask what the address is, and that's useful information and you need it, but let's say there aren't any pleasantries and the conversation is really quick and it only lasts a minute per call, that's an hour and a half. And there are 10 people who have some more complex questions, or perhaps their question isn't readily available, they've had to wait during that time. That being said, if you need to know the address, call. You're always more than welcome. So we're going to walk through. I have slides, so I can keep we're going to walk through approximately 9 resources for sponsors. And while they're working on that, again, this is not, good job. So each slide is just going to have a little blurb about the purpose/function of each of these areas and where to go for additional information, and there are a few helpful tips thrown in. The first thing we're going to look at are FDA guidances. So our guidance document explains our current thinking on things like policy, scientific or regulatory issues, and very thoughtfully, all the guidances that I have referenced in this presentation are outside the doors there, as well as each one of the web resources, and they're plentiful. Should I use the print? Would that be more helpful? Okay. Awesome. Thank you. So again, there will not be a quiz on these long addresses. This is just so that you have the information and you can copy and paste it into your browser and go directly there in your free time when you're reading. So one of the things I'm going to go over is how to search for a guidance. Our web search function has greatly improved over the past 5 years, but we have not achieved the level of Google or Ask yet. So you can use Google and Ask and type in FDA and enough of the information about what you're looking for, and that'll take you to your destination. You can also go to our how to search for guidance, our guidance webpage, and it begins with the button, the option to search for all FDA guidances. Sorry, I hope y'all can read that. So also it has a quick reference section for recently published and withdrawn guidances. So if you knew that your guidance had been published that you're looking for within the past month and a half, and you didn't want to do a lot of typing, you could select that button and check and see what had recently been released. And sometimes that's also just interesting to keep up with the information that's coming out. So next what you would do is enter either the entire title or a portion of the title, what you're looking for. So what I'm looking to return is the best practices for communication between IND sponsors and FDA during drug development. So I'm going to put in best practices. And 3 guidances are returned. And the one that we're searching for is actually the first one. And you can click on the link and it takes you directly to the guidance. And you can read it in that form. And you can also, as a tip, save it and do word searches for information you're looking for and highlight sections that you think you'll use frequently or information that you want to retain. Right. When I first started with the FDA about 11 years ago, I was impressed by all the senior RPMs that had their guidances and they were tabbed and they were wrinkled from where they've been referenced over and over. And they had highlighting and underlining, and you can do all of that electronically and not have to carry a lot of paper with you. So the next one we're going to look at is FDA policy and procedures. And this is more like the day-to-day function, less of the scientific complexities. So CDER and CBER both have documents for this. In CDER, they're maps, and in CBER, they're SOPPs. And again, this is a link to the web page. It's not important that you memorize that, but the nice thing to know is that it's a searchable and sortable database, the one for CDER. You can search by map number. I heard somebody reference an IND application and they call it by their number. There are definitely people who look by number and people who look by name, and we have you covered because you can do that. You can look by office or title or even date. And if you want to learn more about CDER's IND review process, you can check out map 6030.9, good review practice, good review management principles and practices for effective IND development review. This is one that I have marked up a great deal and reference quite often. So the next thing we're going to look at are FDA basics for industry. So this provides basic information about FDA regulatory processes and resources so that you can better understand how to work with the FDA. So this is something, if you have a specific question, you can go and find information. If you have, I like to eat my lunch at my desk and I have about 15 minutes and I want to learn something, I go and I browse. So you can look, there's a topic index from A to Z. There's popular content, and the way that's determined is the number of people who click on a web page and how long they stay there. So we're like, oh, this is really popular. Folks want to know about this. So we've moved it forward so you don't have to search so much for it. There's a place to submit questions and comments. There's also an industry frequently asked questions page that you can peruse, as well as educational resources by topic. And so that's broken down by like drug, device, cosmetics. And that's not the full list, that's just an example of what's available. So in our tips section, we're going to look at the industry frequently asked questions. So again, you select your topic, food, drug, tobacco. I happen to select drug because I'm an O&D, akin to drugs. So you can look up review. You can look up about approval if you want to know more. You can read about import, export. It's all available in the frequently asked section. So this is something, FDA and interactive media. With the advent of the web, we were a little bit slower to come into using interactive media, but I think we have done really well at adapting to it now. You can learn about emerging science, new policies and procedures, advisory committee meetings. You can learn about workshops, anything that we can post and file in a good category so that you can find it, it's here. So we're going to go over a couple of examples. So FDA is on Facebook and Twitter and YouTube, and you think, hey, what are you really saying on those platforms? So for YouTube, it has a lot of videos, and one of the ones that was up yesterday when I looked was about emerging new treatments for sickle cell. If you wanted to know about tattoo removal, it's there. If you want to know about braces or sunscreen, wide variety of information. On Facebook, this brings it more back to the drug side, there were several posts about how long your insulin is stable for at room temperature with the symbol of a hurricane. So you have it as available for drug development, but it's also available to you as a consumer, full of information of what to do when you have questions or what to do when you're faced with challenges. So just like CDER has a presentations page, and you could learn about user fees, drug advertising and marketing, genomics, over-the-counter products. Some of the most recent posted ones are compliance trends, the future of drug development, which was an address given by Dr. Woodcock, and the public health role of drug regulation in the US. This is where I was skipping ahead. So just like CDER has their page, and their page is centered around the work performed there and their oversight of biological products. So labeling and approvals. This again is something that you can use in your work life in drug development, but you can also use it in your personal life if you want to know what the drugs you take or the drugs that your family takes and you just want to learn more. So this database contains information about CDER-regulated, FDA-approved products. So you can, I want to be sure I don't step off the edge, you can search by drug, active ingredient, or application number if you know that. You can also browse by drug. So it has an index A to Z, and you can pick whatever letter you want and scroll down and look at all the drugs in that category. It has approval reports by month. So for NDAs and BLAs, it has it for supplements, has it for original ANDAs, and for tentative approvals. So our sister center, CBER, also has a labeling and approvals webpage. They have a little bit different information. Of course, they have the approvals and the clearances with the supporting documents, but they also have product and manufacturer lists, and they have reports. And the one that I think is referenced most often is post-marketing. So next we're going to look at rules and regulations. So this is a place where we post our proposal of what we're going to do or what our plan is, and it has a comment period. And then we evaluate the comments and see if further action is needed. So on this page, have notice and comment of rulemaking, simplified version, the review of proposed and final rules, and related resources, kind of like what does FDA regulate. And that is a very, very broad category. So these are some examples. It's not an exhaustive list of what FDA regulates. So since we're on the drug side, the Center of Drug Evaluation and Research regulates prescription and non-prescription drugs. So CBER, Biologics and Evaluation Research, they have vaccines, blood products, tissue, and tissue products. Both centers regulate biologic and biosimilar biological products. We work very well together. The Centers for Food Safety and Applied Nutrition, so they regulate bottled water, dietary supplements, infant formulas, and food additives. CDRH, Center for Devices and Radiological Health, things like tongue depressors, pacemakers, dental devices, and surgical implants. And the Center for Tobacco Products, so that includes cigarettes, roll your own, and smokeless tobacco. So another resource we want to look at is FDA-funded scientific research results. So this is a little bit of a work in progress. So the philosophy behind it is broad availability of scientific information and the data to allow critical review. We want it to be accessible and analyzable, and we want to bolster scientific credibility and regulatory decision-making based on these findings. So in the future, the webpage will provide educational resources about public access policies and the tools for complying. So the next, and I think the final resource we're going to look at is the Code of Federal Regulations. This is another document that when you walk in as a new person, you're given a pristine paper copy. Well, you were. Now you will have an electronic copy, but you were given a paper copy. It's a little bit bigger than a paperback book, and each year has a particular color. So you can, one year was orange and purple and gray, and another sign of a person who'd been there a while or handled some complexities was how marked up that version was and how many little Post-its were sticking out, and did they have Post-its on the top and on the side and on the bottom, and all of this is to try to provide the best answers possible in the most efficient way. So the Code of Federal Regulations codifies federal government rules, and it's published in the Federal Register. We have a companion, which is an unofficial compilation of the CFR material and Federal Register amendments, and that's available on the web. And it's searchable and available 24/7, and you don't have to carry it in your carry-on bag. It's available to you. So another good thing to know how to do is how to search the eCFR. So it's searchable by title, and drugs, food and drugs are in Title 21. So on the drop-down box, you select Title 21, and you can browse by part. For our purposes, we know INDs are in 300, so we open up 300, and that expands it out to talk about part, table of contents, and heading. And you can select and dive even deeper, look at 312, and see all the portions that pertain to IND. So that's general provisions, application parameters, administrative actions and responsibilities, and a few more. And this is also a document that you can save if you're going to use a particular section a good bit and mark up for future use. So we're going to switch gears a little bit from resources and move to additional contacts. So most all of these also have an additional way to contact them and or a web page, but they're used a little bit differently. So they're used for basic or procedural drug development questions not directly linked to an existing or planned development program. So there are 12 of those, and again, it's kind of an overview. It's an explanation of the purpose or function of each one and additional information. If they have a web page, the web page is included. If they don't and only have an email address, the email address is included. So the controlled substance staff, they respond to inquiries about the drug scheduling process and the study of abuse potential in animal and human studies. And I think if they haven't already talked about the Division of Drug Information, it will be later on. But they provide expert advice and guidance regarding all aspects of CDER activities to consumers, healthcare professionals, insurance companies, regulated industry, academia, law enforcement. They even help within FDA, and that's their webpage. So the next one we're going to look at is the Division of Pediatric and Maternal Health. So they collaborate to develop clinically relevant, evidence-based labeling and other communications that facilitate an informed use of medicines in children and women of childbearing potential. So our newest addition is the Emerging Technology team. So, and when I gave this talk in May, they didn't even have a web page. So we've moved way forward, and you have a web page, and they have a lot of information. So they respond to external inquiries on novel product design and manufacturing technologies likely to improve product safety, identity, strength, quality, and purity. So the next one is my home team. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that. The next one is the Enhanced Communication team. So we have three main functions. The first one is to respond to general questions about the drug review process. And far and away, this is a majority of what we do. We can also clarify which O&D review division to contact with your question, or if you're not sure where to submit your IND, we can facilitate that for you as well. The third function is we provide assistance for resolving communication challenges with your review team. And for those of you who are familiar with the best practices guidance, there's kind of a stepwise process to that. So you don't go from not hearing from your RPM in 24 hours and turn and call us. You try to contact your RPM, you work your way through the division, chain of command, and that just gives them the opportunity to take care of it. So that would be the Chief Project Management staff, the Division Director or Deputy Director, and then us. And thus far, we have not had any requests for assistance that have reached our level. I will say that a lot of it depends on the timing and the nature of what you're trying to do. If you have an emergency IND situation and you need to talk to somebody very quickly, escalate that within a matter of an hour or a couple hours or whatever you need to get to your finished goal. But if you're planning a submission that's 6 months down the line, give them a couple of days to get back to you because we do have a lot of other things that are pressing to be done in that time as well. That being said, if you don't hear from us, call back. Also feel comfortable that if you didn't hear from your particular assigned contact, move to the next step. We really strive very hard to put out-of-office messages in and have coverage, but things happen as we see with technology. I know a couple of times for the Enhanced Communication team line, it's been offline and we didn't know it. So do feel comfortable moving forward. Another one we want to talk about is import-export, and this comes up quite frequently, especially in the very beginning of the IND process. So they respond to questions related to general import compliance, your export certificate questions, and then overall compliance questions. Which is a nice segue into the Office of Pharmaceutical Quality. So they respond to product quality related inquiries, and they have an absolutely phenomenal website with an abundance of information. You could also contact the CDER Ombudsman. So they have a little bit of overlap with the Enhanced Communication team in that they can facilitate if you're having a communication challenge. They can provide informal advice of how to do that. They can assist you with issues that arise in the context of the regulatory process. And they can, they're a place where you can provide feedback about CDER's programs and overall performance. If you've ever thought, oh, I wish y'all did this, or this particular thing doesn't function very well, This is where you can provide that information. And upon request, your communication will be kept confidential. Okay, the next one is the Rare Diseases Program. They engage in scientific and regulatory information exchanges with the international regulatory agencies. They also promote the development of treatments by collaborating with internal and external rare disease stakeholders. Next, small business and industry assistant. I'm sure you've heard more about what they do than one sentence that's on my slide, but just in case you're flipping through and wanted to know on the fly, so they provide human drug product development and regulation information. And they have a much shorter web address. The next one we're going to look at is therapeutic biologics and biosimilar staff. So they ensure consistency in the scientific and regulatory approach and advice regarding development programs for therapeutic biologics or proposed biosimilar products. So the webpage that's listed here really just contains additional information about biosimilars. It is not the therapeutic biologics and biosimilar staff webpage, but they do have an email address, and I've included that here, and you can send your questions there. Next one we're going to look at is the Biomarker Qualification Program. So they encourage biomarker development by providing a framework for development and regulatory acceptance. So our sister agency, CBER, also has additional contacts. So they have the Manufacturers Assistance and Technical Training Branch and an ombudsman. So their Manufacturers Assistance Branch, they serve the same function as the Enhanced Communication Team does for CDER, in addition to some additional areas. So they provide information on clinical investigator, adverse event reporting, submissions, and how to submit an IND. So I think this is a good time to think of the Manufacturer's Assistance Technical Training Branch and the Enhanced Communication Team as your option to phone a friend. So if you're not really sure where you need to go, call us, and we can help you get to the right place without having to spend a lot of time in the challenging telephone tree, which we all have experienced in our personal lives. So we're trying to make it easy. So their ombudsman functions the same way as REdI does, except you can provide feedback on their programs. And again, upon request, the communication will be kept confidential. So the last area that we're going to look at in this series is the Office of Special Medical Programs Additional Contacts. So this sits in the Office of the Commissioner. And they have 5 main areas. So the first one is Advisory Committee, Oversight, and Management staff. They provide guidance and assistance on the establishment, staffing, and management of public advisory committees. It's where you can go to see the different calendars and look at the meeting materials once they're posted. The next office is the Office of Combination Products. So they address pre-marketing review and post-marketing regulation questions. They provide training to FDA staff and industry, and they are responsible for classifying products. Next one is the Office of Good Clinical Practice. So they plan and conduct training and outreach programs. They respond to good clinical practice and human safety protection questions. And the next is the Office of Orphan Product Development. They determine orphan drug designation, humanitarian use device, rare pediatric disease priority voucher review. We look at grants and answer general questions about orphan product development. And last but not least is the Office of Pediatric Therapeutics. They have several programs, scientific activities, ethics, safety, international, and neonatology. And if you want to learn more about those, again, go to the webpage, look at the information. So we're going to switch gears a little bit because we've been talking about mostly web-based resources and specific functional teams, and we're going to look at how to communicate with like your review division, RPM, and the follow-on of that are the parameters for different communication types. So I think we have a representation for each of the communication types. So we have the unsecure and secure email, we have telephone, we have correspondence, meetings, and yes, fax, because we still fax. So first thing we're going to look at is the Review Division Regulatory Project Manager. So they are your primary contact for communications between FDA and sponsor during the life cycle of drug development. Sometimes you'll interact by phone, and what types of questions and what types of things could be handled over the phone. They're suitable for general or administrative questions. And this is straight email, so this is not secure email. Yes, you can email us. We can respond, FDA RPMs can respond to general questions via non-secure email. We cannot send your confidential email or confidential information back to you in an email from us if you don't have secure email. Next, we're going to look at secure email. I like that it has a lock. And I've included here the link of who to contact to establish secure email with the FDA. Typically, RPMs use this to send a courtesy copy of an FDA correspondence when it communicates a regulatory action or is time sensitive. And our good old friend, the fax. And you know, even though fax machines have been updated, that was the best clip art I could find for the fax machine. So you're thinking, why are we faxing in this day and age? Faxes can be used in the place of secure email. So if you have unsecure email and we need to send you an action letter as a courtesy copy or something that has a timeline, or you need to send us information that is confidential and you don't want to send it via unsecure email, we can use the fax. So the following types of questions are best addressed in a meeting or submission to FDA. And it's because of the complexity and the amount of teamwork that goes into formulating a response. So those would be complex scientific or technical questions, policy questions, regulatory questions, and if you're not sure, call your RPM. Talk to them and say, hey, this is my question. They'll help you determine the correct path. So maybe you have two questions, and this is, again, I'm sorry, I really don't have a lot of information about meetings, but be happy to kind of maybe talk offline and help get you the responses that you're looking for. But let's say you have two questions, and that doesn't really rise to the need of holding a meeting. You can send those in a regulatory submission and request a response, and it can be handled that way. Let's say you have enough questions, but you feel like they're answerable via written response. You can send them in and request a meeting and request written response only. There are a lot of options in terms of communication, but your straightforward questions, they can be handled by either looking up on a web resource or calling your RPM or calling another resource. But again, the complex issues are best addressed more formally through a meeting or a submission. And I think we're up to question time.
All right, thank you, Rachel. A wealth of great information there. As per usual in the room, I will run around with the microphone for anybody that raises their hands so you don't have to try to fight through the aisles. But while we're looking for raised hands, could we go ahead and have our first online question, please?
Just so you know, I got the Phil reference, and I love the Phil Donahue reference. So I remember that, the running across the room.
So I wasn't just dating myself,
No.
I dated you as well.
There we go. We're informed.
All right, online question, please, Ray.
Who do I contact to follow up on a submission?
I would contact your assigned regulatory project manager. And that's assuming that you know who that is for the submission. So let's say it was an initiating submission, and you're requesting a pre-IND or the creation of an IND, and you're not sure who your project manager is. You could contact the review division if you knew where you sent it. And I say that because a lot of times people aren't really sure where to send things, and so they just send it to the FDA, and it takes a few days for us to figure it out and get it to the right place. You can also, in that case, contact the Enhanced Communication team. Your phone a friend, and we'll help you get to the right place.
Okay, anybody in the room? People are ready to go check out the restaurant. Another online question for me, please.
Can you provide any general guidance around how many questions are appropriate for requesting a formal meeting?
So I had the great joy and pleasure of being able to work on the Enhanced Communication Guidance and the Formal Meetings Guidance. And there's a lot of questions because we like concrete. We like to know, both industry and FDA, what to expect and what the rules are and how we can do that. And the simple answer is, it depends on the complexity of the question. So if we were to say, oh, you can have 2 questions, I've seen people who have sent in a briefing document with 2 questions and subparts A through Z. So that, you can't really get through that in a meeting. Again, I've seen maybe a package that comes in and it has 13 questions, but they're very straightforward. So the way that we resolve that is, instead of giving a number, we described it as the number of questions that can reasonably be expected to be discussed during the allotted meeting time. So that's kind of wiggly, but it's not. So if you request a 90-minute meeting and you think your questions can be done in 90 minutes, submit those questions. If we grant a 60-minute meeting, then we can work on what questions to address. We'll also send you preliminary responses, and that may take some of the questions off the discussion table. So again, what we're really trying to do is have an effective meeting for you. So if we're rushing through and there's so many questions that we can't concentrate and have a good discussion, that's not helpful to either side. That was a long answer, I'm sorry.
It's thorough. First question here in the room.
Thanks, Rachel. Kevin O'Neill in Philadelphia. With regard to clinicaltrials.gov, I know that is operated or hosted by the National Institutes of Health. And I was wondering, is there a CFR or other regulation that compels United States-based sponsor companies to report any and all trial results on clinicaltrials.gov, even if the trial was conducted in the United States or internationally?
So I'm going to say that is a fabulous question. And
it's really important because of the disclosure of the studies and the results.
And it's really outside my area of knowledge or expertise. So I don't have an off the top of my head answer, but I'm happy to look into it for you. And if I'm going to be around, instead of scooting right off to lunch, you can give me your information. I'll look into it. Awesome. And see about getting you to the right place. But that's okay. That's not, protected information.
Other questions in the room? Next online question, please.
How does FDA ensure that they are speaking to an authorized person on any individual application?
So you would mean like your regulatory representative or authorized U.S. agent is what I'm thinking. So with each submission, there comes a form that identifies who that is. And if we originate the call, that's who we call. That's how we ensure that.
Okay.
Well, I think that's much more of a sticky wicket and outside the purview of what we can do within this room. But for the most part, if you're talking to somebody that you know regularly, you know that, and you know the amount of information that they have, and a lot of times you can tell by the questions. And I've never really encountered that. I have encountered people who will call and kind of fish for information, but they don't have enough to really start the conversation. They don't know the IND number. They don't know the drug name. So we do the best we can with that.
Okay. One more from online, please.
How do I determine which division to submit an IND to?
So again, I get to plug my own team. The Enhanced Communication Team webpage has a real nice outlay of all the divisions and kind of their titles, and mostly that conveys what they review. But let's say that you want to know a little bit more in depth about between two divisions that both review cancer type drugs. Again, that's listed there, and hopefully that helps you figure it out. And if you don't see where you squarely fit in there, call your friend, the Enhanced Communication Team, and we'll help you get to the right division.
Okay, and that's all the time we have for questions. Please help me thank Rachel for coming and talking to us here today.
Thank y'all.